everybody, welcome to Burtech. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about how Mark Brown from the Game Maker's Toolkit did something that's actually really amazing. Alright, welcome back. So, if you haven't checked out the show Game Maker's Toolkit, I highly recommend that you do. If you're into game design or just kind of software development altogether, it's a really good channel and he really goes into depth as to what is kind of going on behind the scenes and kind of the bigger elements of design. But earlier, kind of last year, he decided that he wanted to make a game and he wanted to kind of chronologically do and kind of just narrate it over his findings here. And one thing that he did, which was probably the hardest thing in game development to do, was he decided to get a bunch of feedback for his game here. Now, this is something that you should probably do as well, whether it's for your app or your game or whatever it is you want to do. You need to get some kind of feedback. Now, I wish there were more sites that kind of just gave you feedback, but you know, it would be a really good and interesting site if there was just a site that kind of just gave you feedback on whatever it is you're trying to do here. But what he did is that he really made sure that he got a lot of feedback from his game here. And the thing is that when you're first starting out at anything, you know, whether it's game design or whatever, you're not going to be really good at it. And it's really difficult. And even I don't like doing this myself. I make a game and then a bunch of people point things out here. But he made a 20-minute video, which I highly recommend that you check out here. But what he does here is he gets a lot of feedback, and a lot of that feedback is quite negative. And he takes it like a champ here. And this is probably the hardest thing to do. It's really hard to put your creation out there and to have people give feedback. But here's the thing. When you're first starting out, you don't want to build your kind of project that you really want to build, right? You want to build a bunch of sample projects that you really don't care about. You set those up for feedback, and if you do that, well then guess what? Nobody really cares. If you make something that you don't care about and it's not very good and some people don't like it, well guess what? Nobody cares. But if it's like your passion project, it's the projects that you've always wanted to do, you're going to take it a lot worse. And this is just natural, right? So I have projects that I really want to do, and there's other projects that, you know, are not really as important here, right? And if you build a bunch of projects, whether it's game design or software development or whatever, and you don't really care what they are, then the feedback, again, isn't really going to be that bad here. So what he has done here is absolutely really amazing. So in this video, he gets a lot of feedback that's kind of extremely low level and high level. So what I mean by that is that there's things like the jump arc and just like the general controls that he gets feedback on. But he also gets feedback on how people are kind of like glitching the game. And that's something you don't really need to worry about until later on here. If you're first starting out, you just need to make sure your game is good and fun and playable. And that is pretty much all you need to be concerned about. Don't worry about the glitches and whatnot here. But he's also dealing with a lot of high-level concepts of like whether it should be a puzzle platformer, etc. And that's also good to know too. And the thing is that, you know, when you're first starting out, you don't want to make your big project here. I've tried to do that many times. And then the thing is that I've received a lot more career success on projects that I thought were kind of meh, right? So I'll give you a really good example. When I first started out on Udemy in 2012, Stencil, the game engine Stencil was a really popular game engine. Now, I had first started making a course on Construct 3. It was 35 hours. It told you how to do basically everything. The coding, even though it was a non-coding game engine, but you know, kind of the logic, the artwork, the music, the level design, literally everything. And so it was a pretty big course. And then, you know, a few months later, everyone was asking me for a Stencil course, and I'm like, I don't really want to do one, and I'm gonna make it like 10 hours. So I had this 35 epic like course here, and then I had another 10-hour course, and I really didn't think it was good. I thought it was meh at best. And like if I were to give it a grade, and I was being honest with myself, I would call it like maybe a B minus, maybe even a C+, right? And this is just me being, you know, kind of realistic about the work that I did. But you know what? It was really well received, and it actually made a lot more money than I thought it would, right? And so this is something that you have to understand as well, is just because your passion project doesn't get released doesn't mean that you're going to release another project that's not going to do well or get well received. Because at the end of the day, you're making software and games for users to use, right? And sometimes you just have to put things out there. Now, when it comes to putting things out there, you can absolutely just do this not under your own name, but you can do it under a pseudonym, right? And so that you can just kind of test out the waters under like a different business name. It can be kind of anything, right? You don't have to use your name, and this is highly recommend you do this. You don't use your real name. You just use kind of like a random studio. You can always change the studio name later if you want to. If you just kind of pick a random name out of a hat and then that ends up being the name that works. And if you make a game that works really well, then you can always change your name, right? If you want to. But I've seen a lot of companies do this. I've seen some bands that have done this, like they just kind of pick a name out of a hat, and that's the one that kind of stuck here. So the point is that this video is really illuminating into kind of how someone who's never started to build a game to get feedback early on. And this is something you want to do as well, right? If you can get kind of feedback on your projects, that's the best thing that you can do. The best thing you can do is get a lot of feedback, and you should just build a bunch of projects that you don't really care about at first. And I know that sounds really counterintuitive, but if you do that, you're going to get some feedback, and it doesn't matter, right? Because it's not a project you really want to do. And this is the hard thing about being an entrepreneur or a coder, is like you may never get to do your passion project. There are projects that I really want to do, and like they just cost too much money, and I don't think anyone's going to give me that kind of money, right? To do it here. It's within the millions here, and I'd love to do this stuff, but I don't think anyone's going to give it here. So for me personally, I just tend to build a lot of projects out there and release them and see what the customers think here. Just like that stencil course 10 years ago, I do projects like that today, and some courses really resonate with people that I never thought that they would, right? It's just the way it is, right? Sometimes you release something and you think it's gonna work and it doesn't. And other times you release things as a joke and it works. And oftentimes it does come as a joke here. All right, so that concludes this video. So please check out this video here. This video is really good, and I highly recommend that you check it out here. And please comment down below. Have you ever gotten a lot of feedback early on with a project? I want to know your thoughts down below, because this channel doesn't get enough comments, so please comment down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video.